Hey guys, welcome to this session on Full Stack Developer by Intellipaat. In this session, we'll take a look at what is a full stack developer, what are the roles and responsibilities of a full stack developer, and how you can become one. So, with that in mind, let's begin. But before we begin, do click on the subscribe button and click on the bell icon to never miss another update. So, let's take a look at the agenda. We'll begin by understanding what is full stack developer. So, what is a full stack developer? What does he do? Then we'll understand why full stack development, why is it important, why it's so prevalent nowadays. Then we'll take a look at the average salary of a full stack developer. We'll move on to understand what are the companies that are hiring full stack developers. Then we'll understand the components of a full stack development or a full stack application. In other words, we'll understand what are the technologies that are needed to be learned in order to become a full stack developer or build a full stack application. Then we'll take a look at the learning path of full stack development. So in case you are wondering how you can become a full stack developer, we'll take a look at that as well. And then finally, we'll take a look at a demo that will build in which we'll show you the code of a really simple full stack application. So what is a full stack developer? So a full stack developer is a person who can work on both the front end, which is also known as the client side, which is the thing that the user interacts with, the user sees, the buttons, the forms, and all the other things that a user can see and touch on a web page. That's called the front end, and the back end of the application that the user doesn't see, but that stores the data of the user, allows them to log in, remembers their previously committed activities, so on and so forth. So a person who can work with both is called a full stack developer. So why full stack development? So full stack development is so popular nowadays mainly because it has several advantages. Some of them are it's cost effective. So a person who knows both the full stack development as in both the front end and the back end would help save a company a lot of money. And it's not unreasonable for them to know both front end and back end mainly because many of the skills are transferable and many of them are not. And because of the overlap, it's expected for a person to know both the front end and the back end. It's easy to maintain. So once you build an application using full stack framework and you have a lot of full stack developers, then you can ask any one of them to take a look at the front end and the other ones to take a look at the back end, and it'll work just fine. Skills are transferable. So full stack development, since we are using for front end and back end, many of them could be built using many languages and frameworks, and many of the skills used in those frameworks and languages are transferable. Then comes rapid application development. So if you're building front end and the back end, they can both be built separately, and once they can be integrated. So let's take a look at the average salary of a full stack developer. So in the US, it's $92,000. In India, it's 8.25 lakhs per annum, and in the UK, it's 48,000. It's not really that bad of a salary. It's the average salary of a person. You can go much higher than that as well. Let's take a look at the companies that are hiring full stack developers. So as you can see, there are many types of companies that are hiring full stack developers. Companies ranging from product-based companies to service-based companies. Each one of them require full stack developers mainly because they have applications that need to be deployed on the internet and needs to be taken care of both the front end and the back end. So that's why they are hiring full stack developers. As you can see, there's no shortage of companies, and these are just a small subset of the companies. So as you can see, companies like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Unisys, Fractal Labs, IBM, Google, Adobe, Best Buy, and many other companies are hiring full stack developers. And these are just a small subset of the companies. There are many other companies that are hiring full stack developers as well. Let's take a look at the components of full stack development. So what are the things that a full stack developer is expected to know? What are the things that a full stack developer works with on a daily basis? So there are three major components of full stack development: the front end, back end, and the database. Front end is what the user sees. The back end is how the data that the user sends is stored and how it's retrieved. And finally, the database is where the data is stored. So a database could mean a lot of things, and we'll take a look at all of the options that you have in cases of database. Let's take a look at all three of these major components one by one. Let's take a look at front end. So as already discussed, front end is also called the client side. It's the part of the application that the user interacts with, and it mainly consists of three technologies: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These three technologies have been there since a long time, since the early 2000s, and HTML has been there for the longest. So let's take a look at them one by one. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is used to define the structure and the elements of a web page. So where does a form go? Where does a paragraph go? Where does a heading go? How are these things arranged? Which comes first? Which comes last? All of that is defined by HTML. stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So it's a markup language, not a programming or a scripting language. Then comes CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It is used to define the style and layout of a web page. When you see a button with a different color, different layout, rounded corners, all of that, it's done using CSS. In using CSS, we choose an element on a web page and give it styles and choose multiple elements and lay them out on the web page the way we want to. So if you've seen a grid layout or a layout in which multiple elements are stacked together on top of each other, all of that is done using CSS. Then comes JavaScript. It is used to add interactivity and asynchronous communication to a web page. So if you've ever filled out a form where they ask you to fill out a username and a password, and the username should be unique and password should match a specific criteria like 8 characters long, alphanumeric with one special character, all of that is taken care of by JavaScript. So when you type a username and you move on to the next field, which is to write password, the web page will automatically inform you whether that username is available or not, and that communication is taken care of by JavaScript. Now let's take a look at some front-end frameworks. But before that, let's understand what a framework is. So front-end framework is just a bundle of code or a library of code which takes care of a lot of commonly built features on the front-end applications. So to give you an example, things like form validation. This is something that every application that is on the internet needs. Any front-end application has a form, and that form, when it's filled, we need to validate whether the data is in correct format, whether it doesn't contain any malicious content like some script or some CSS or some sort of code that when I submit it to the server, it gets run automatically. There are a lot of things that you need to take care of, and many of these get taken care of by framework. You just need to define the rules that you want the data that is given to you by the user needs to follow, and the front-end frameworks will take care of that. And many other things like that are taken care of by the framework so that you can just focus on building your own application. Here are a few front-end frameworks: Angular, React, and Vue. So Angular is a front-end framework that is created by Google, and it's a JavaScript framework. There are two frameworks named AngularJS, and the other one is simply named Angular. The difference is AngularJS is the first version and Angular is the later versions from 2 till the current version that is as of now. Now, the reason why it's different is because AngularJS, the code you write in AngularJS to build an application is extremely different from the code you write in Angular. So they follow very separate paradigms. AngularJS is more concerned with typing markup and then using JavaScript, get elements from those markups and hook them up with backend. On the other hand, in Angular, we build components and build a component tree model in which everything is a component, and that is entirely different from AngularJS. So if you're working on JavaScript and you're trying to learn a new framework, I would recommend that you learn Angular. AngularJS is useful only if you're working on an application that has been built already with AngularJS. Then comes React. React is a front-end JavaScript framework that has been created by Facebook. It's in its 16th version as of now, and it mainly deals with efficiently rendering components based on application state. So to give you an example, let's say that you are taking a look at some website that tells you the score of a particular game. Now, as the game progresses, the score updates automatically. So you don't want to refresh the application again and again and again to fetch new data, and you don't want the entire web page to render again and again and again to whenever the new score comes in. So what happens is React will take care of that automatically. It will listen for a backend server to send back some data that it can display on the screen, and then it takes care of where the data is being referenced and how can it most efficiently show that data to the user. So if you're trying to build an application that takes using a tool that takes care of that, then React is the tool for you. React doesn't come with a lot of other features like routing and sometimes form validations, but there are other libraries that integrate with React and provide you with that feature. So it's a very mix and match components for you. Then comes Vue. So Vue or Vue.js is a front-end JavaScript framework that is created by a guy named Ivan Yu. He's an ex-Google employee. He built it after using Angular because he found it a little difficult to get started with. And this framework is very much like Angular, but it's considered to be much easier to get started with. So if you're trying out Angular and it doesn't make much sense to you, then you can try out Vue. And if you don't like either one of them, then you can try out React as well. Now let's take a look at the backend. So backend is also known as the server side part of the application. and it deals with data and the relationships with the data. So the users posts, the post comments on the users posts by which user, the users and their followers and the connections between them, all of that is taken care of by the backend. So backend can be built with many languages. There's not just one language that allows you to build a backend of an application. Let's take a look at some of them. So there's PHP, Python, Ruby, NodeJS, Java. There are many other languages like C# and all, and you can use any of them. Let's take a look at PHP. PHP stands for PHP Hypertext Preprocessor. It is one of the most popular backend languages. It's very easy to use. It's very cheap to host a PHP built application. So that's why it's one of the most popular languages out there. And many blogging websites and many content management services such as WordPress, Joomla, Drupal are built on PHP. So that's why it's considered one of the most popular languages out there, because most of the blogs that have been written are hosted on WordPress and they are written in PHP. Then comes Python. So Python is one of the easiest languages to pick up. It has a really broad range, so it's not just confined to full stack development. If you're building a Python application and if you know Python, you can also move into other fields like machine learning, building user interfaces for a desktop application, and many other things. All of that is taken care by Python. And this is why many people like learning Python, because they would have a wider spectrum of technologies to work. So with that in mind, Python comes with a lot of framework to build a web server so that you don't have to do everything from scratch. The most popular ones are Django, Flask, Web2Py, although there are many others as well. Now, Django is quite popular and it's used in the backend of Instagram and many other popular web applications as well. Then comes Ruby. Ruby is also a very easy language to pick up. So if you're trying to learn a new language and you want to learn it using something that's very easy to learn, you can pick either Python or Ruby. I would recommend that you take a look at both of them and make your mind using that. Now, Ruby on Rails is one of the most popular frameworks on the internet, mainly because it takes care of a lot of the boilerplate code that you have to write. There's also Sinatra, which is a micro framework, so it takes care of some parts of the application and other parts you have to write. So Ruby on Rails is also very popular. Many applications have been built using Ruby on Rails. I think one of the most popular is Basecamp. Also, Twitter was built using Ruby on Rails, but they have started to shift their application from Ruby on Rails to Scala, which is another language that uses Java Virtual Machine in the background. So you can build many applications and many languages can be a part of it. Then comes Node.js. It is a C++ runtime that allows you to write code written in JavaScript that will allow you to build a web server. Now it has several frameworks such as Express.js and Happy.js. So if you're a JavaScript developer, if you know the front end of an application and you want to move on to the back end, then you can take a look at Node.js. It's very easy to use. It's quite fun to use. If you're a JavaScript developer, there's not a lot you need to get started with. You can't port your entire front end code to the back end, mainly because the environments are different, but the syntax is going to be the same, and the keywords, the language constructs, everything is going to be the same. In case you have any questions, do ask them in the chat box. Our representatives are there for you to answer any questions that you have. So do make sure that you're using the chat box for your use. Now let's move on to the next one, which is Java. Java is by far the most popular language that is on this list. The main reason of its popularity is because it's used in many enterprise grade applications, and many frameworks are built on this premise that they provide enterprise level security and data speed and all of that. So we have Java EE, which stands for Java Enterprise Edition. It has a lot of functionalities that allow you to build an application that could serve an enterprise, such as banking enterprises, medical enterprises, so on and so forth. And then there's Spring. Spring is by far the most popular framework written in Java. It's very easy to use. It takes care of a lot of things behind the scenes. It uses a lot of annotations, and it's really easy to pick up, more easier than Java EE. So if you're trying to learn Java and you want to build a web application using Java, you can take a look at Spring or Java EE, or there are many others like Play and many others like that. So you can take a look at that as well. Then comes databases. So databases are used to persist the data and retrieve it later for the user to see, or for the user's manipulation, to update some data, to delete some data, so on and so forth. There are mainly two types of databases: the SQL databases and NoSQL databases. So if you have learned about databases, then you have probably come across these two things. Let's demystify what they mean. So SQL databases are used to model your data in form of rows and columns. in forms of tables, multiple tables containing data about users, and all of them are linked together using foreign keys, primary keys, so on and so forth. So if you can model your data in such a way in a tabular format, then SQL is good for you. That's why SQL is used. On the other hand, if you have data that doesn't have a specific shape, like 10 rows, 9 rows, 8 columns, something like this, if it doesn't have a particular shape, it could be that data has only one column, or it could have multiple columns, then SQL doesn't make sense. Relational databases don't make much sense in that scenario. You are much better to use NoSQL databases, and there are good use cases for both of them. I would recommend that you use a NoSQL database if you're trying to model something that's a little difficult to model in a relational context. So something like friendships between people, something that is used in Facebook. This is also taken care of by something called a graph database, which is a kind of NoSQL database. So in NoSQL databases, there are many other kinds of databases or many other sub categories like document-based, graph-based, column-based, and many others. So take a look at the different kinds and think about which one is the best for you. For instance, document-based, you can take a look at MongoDB. For graph-based, you can take a look at Neo4j. If you have many users and you want to depict relationships between them, such as one user following the other user and so on, then graph databases are for you. If you have data that doesn't have a particular shape, then document database are for you, and there's many other options for you as well. And if you have data that you can model using tables, then SQL is for you. Let's take a look at the learning path of a full stack developer. So how you as a novice could become a full stack developer. So at the beginning, you need to know programming. Programming in the sense you need to learn a language. I would recommend that you learn JavaScript so that you can learn both front end and the back end, but that's not really necessary. If you already know one language and you want to learn the front end, you can take a look at that. You can learn JavaScript, and using the language that you already know, if it's possible, then you can build a backend with that as well. So after programming, you need to know the front end, how to build a front end of the application. It's not very difficult. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and if necessary, then a framework. But if not, then you can just use these three. Then there's backend. So the backend of an application can be built using a language like PHP, Java, Ruby, Python, and there are many frameworks as well. Then you need to learn a database technology to make sure that the user can save the data. And then we take a look at getting certified. So after you get certified, you can stand out of the crowd and the recruiters can take a look at you. Some recruiters specifically look for people who are certified so that they can prove that they have learned something and move ahead. And then there's applying for jobs. So that's the final part. And after you're certified, you have a much higher chance of getting a job. Let's take a look at a demo of a full stack application. This is a really simple application that we have built. Let me just show you. So first things first, this is the demo folder. As you can see, I have created a client folder and a server folder. Let me show you. The client folder has an index.html page. It's a very simple page. There's not a lot here. It's just a form, and I'll show you what that is. There's no JavaScript required as of now, but if you want, you can have that as well. So now if I open this, I have opened all of them inside these command prompts. As you can see, this is the client folder. I need to run it inside a local server. So I have a utility called Light Server, and it will run it for me. So this is what it looks like. This is the Light Server that I have. This is for the front end. It's very basic. So that's not a lot for you to learn here, but you can take a look at how building small front ends can also help you out when you're trying out new things. And this is what the backend code looks like. Again, it's really small. We are using the Express framework. We are creating an application. We are using the MongoDB database. Let me just show you here. This is what the database looks like. Let's take a look at the collections that we have. And in case you don't understand what collections are, don't worry. They are just, think of it as a folder in which we'll be storing our data. So after that, we wire up our application to accept form data. Then we take a look at a request that's sent to the home page of our application. Then we take a look at the request and the response. We connect to the database. Then we extract the information. We want to store the text that the user sends, and we want to make done to be false. So by default, when a user sends a to-do list or to-do item, its done property is set to false, which means it's not been completed yet. Then we save it to the database, expect a response. In case we run into some error, we'll send back error occurred. And in case we don't, we'll send back the response and close the database. Now we take a look at this. We say, okay, look at the port 8001. And once the connection has been established and our server is running on port 8001, then console.log connected. So now I go here, I submit, let's say, data. Press submit. It takes some time, but it won't work just now, and you will see why. The site cannot be reached, mainly because I have not started the backend. So this is something that you need to take care of. Both of them need to be running at the same time. Now, when I get connected written over here, that means that it's working. As you can see, it's still nothing here. So I have to do this again. Click on submit. And now, as you can see, I get OK. And I have inserted the data. Now, if I take a look at the collections, I have a to-do collection. So dv.todo.find. This will show me everything that's inside, and I have inserted the data inside my MongoDB database. So it's that easy to get started with it. This is really easy to understand. As you can see, I'm submitting the data on the localhost 8001 using the post method. When you submit a form data, you use the post method. We have the data named as text, which is what we refer to here. As you can see, request.body.text, and everything works as expected. So as you can see, it's not difficult to build an application using full stack development. Just need to get started with it, and I've already given you one way to get started with it. And whenever I think about learning about a new technology, this quote always makes me more interested in learning that. An investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. So with that in mind, we have our own community site called the intellipaat.com/communities. It's the web address of a community site. You can go to that community site, log in, register, and then ask your questions. Whenever you run into an error while building an application, which you're obviously going to run into, many experienced developers run into these errors as well, and you don't know how to solve them, ask a question on the community site, and many of your peers or maybe some uh, veterans in these languages could help you out. They'll post the solution, how you can get to the solution, they'll post you some resources, so on and so forth. So it's a great site for people to learn, overcome the problems that they're facing when they're building an application. Then comes blog. We have on our website a blog section as well, where we provide a lot of great content regarding a lot of technologies, not just full stack development, but also AI, machine learning, cloud development, so on and so forth. So you can, if you're interested in learning that or reading more about it, our blogs are there for you. In case you're more of a viewing person and not more of a reading person, then we have our YouTube channel as well, and you can take a look at the videos that we have provided. We have a lot of great free content for you available on that as well. And if all of that makes sense and you have taken a look at that, but you're still looking for a new thing like a course or something, so when you go to our website, we have our intellipaat.com/academy website. This website has a lot of free courses for you, so you can take a look at them and get started with the technology. If you wanted to learn Java, C and data structures, MS Excel, MS SQL, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, DevOps, many other things that you can take a look at and learn. And once you learn them, it's very easy to get started with it. It's free, so just sign up, log in, enroll in a course, and get started with it. We have very experienced course advisors, companies that are hiring from us, and so on and so forth. So if you're done with the free courses, but you want more in-depth knowledge about full stack development, and you want to get certified as well, I would recommend our full stack development course. You learn a lot of great content. Let me just show you the course content here. So we'll begin by understanding core software development concept. We'll understand what are data structures, algorithms, problem solving, design thinking. That way you can also be introduced to a programming language and it won't be esoteric. So if you're starting from complete scratch, that's going to be fine as well. We'll learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, responsive design, Bootstrap, many other things that you need for front-end development. We'll move on to learn React.js using JSX, props, components, and so on. We'll take a look at some popular MVC, which is model view controller frameworks such as Python, SPA, or PHP. So as you can see, we can take a look at both front end and the back end. Then we'll understand databases and we'll take a look at PostgreSQL, which is an SQL database. And we'll also take a look at how to performance tune a web application. So you've built an application, but you are not sure how it's going to work or what are the things that are causing performance degradation on your application. We'll take a look at progressive web applications, unit testing, Google Lighthouse, Webpack, lazy loading a web page using service workers, and so on and so forth. And finally, we'll take a look at software development process using agile methodology. using the Kanban project management systems, issues, how you can take a look at issues, you can take a look at user stories, what are sprints in software development, so on and so forth. After that, once you've finished it, you will get this certification, and it's really helpful for you. Once you get certification, then that means that you have learned what we had set out for you to learn, and you can display that in your resumes, in your LinkedIn profile, and the recruiters will reach out to you because they'll be looking for candidates for certified. It's one of our most well-reviewed courses, so you can take a look at the reviews as well. If you have questions, then we have an FAQ section as well. Most probably your questions are answered here. But in case these questions are not answered, I'll show you where you can go next. But before that, thanks for sticking around. And as a token of appreciation, this is a YouTube 32 coupon code. If you choose to buy a course right now immediately, you can use YouTube 30 and it will give you flat 30% off on any course that you want, which is offered specifically for the YouTube users. And I would recommend that you take use of it as soon as possible, and you'll get flat 30% off on any course that you choose. So if you're done with that and you want to learn more, you can, here's the numbers that you can contact us on. And here's the email that you can contact us on. Our course advisors are always there for you to chat with them and help you to get the best course possible. So with that in mind, we have come to the end of the session. Hopefully this was informative for you. Hopefully you've learned a lot and this helps you get started with full stack development. And with that in mind, thank you so much and I'll see you next time.